Fonts that evoke emotions. How type choices shape brands and perception and users' emotion. Typography is more important than we think. Before people even read words, they already should feel something to the base of your brand. So this presentation will show you how font and type spaces influence perceptions, emotion, and decision making. Typography is everywhere. It's involved in our branding, in our social media, in our apps, in advertising. So every time you see a text, your brain immediately makes a judgment. For example, luxurious brand feel something when
I don't think your slide is moving, or it's just on one on the
um,
first one.
I'm still trying to introduce the what okay, thank you. Um typography m- m- typography matters. It influences the perception and clarity and the brand tone. So everywhere we are, there's fonts, there's text, there's TypeScript in everything we do. Brands have their different fonts and their different text, and they try to make us feel something before we even read the text. We should have an emotional response. Demographic choices impacts legibility, memory, and emotional responses. This is a strategic selection that aligns the message with their users' expectations and business objectives. Some brands, let's say a tech startup, you don't feel like a luxurious brand. It should feel like something that's serious and trustworthy. It's not just the logo or the color of the brand that matters. The font choices also makes It's also important. It also leaves a response to the users. It also leaves a psychological imprint on the user's mind. So today we'll be discussing on the different ways psychology should is going to be explored, different font types to use, how different font categories and how what they communicate. We should also be talking about typography effects on branding, UX, and everyday lifestyle. So, what is font psychology? Font psychology is the study of how typefaces influences how people think and feel. Different fonts carry different personalities. Just like when people judge logos or other aspects of branding and designing, it is no other different than the fonts that we use for our branding. So they should also carry a judge for the typography, and most of the time it's subconscious. So the historical context here is typography evolved from calligraphy into print, into digital, into digital typography that we have today, carrying its own cultural associations. So we use historical cues to signal heritage, modernity, or craftsmanship in our brand identity, depending on what type of brand we're building. Well, going for a modern brand, we'll definitely have a modern type of feel to it, a minimalistic type of modern feel to it. If we are creating a brand for let's say we're creating a food brand and they sell the cultural delicacies that we have, the eba, the amala, and everything. You have to have a cultural feel to the brand. So your text, your typefaces for the branding should also have should also have a cultural feel to it. It should be heritage in the branding identity. So why font the perceptual cues that we have here is letters, shape, spacing, and rhythm signal traits like trust and friendliness or luxury. Leverage contrast and proportions to guide first impressions and readability. Font influences emotion because of their shape and structure. For example, sharp edges may feel strong or aggressive, while some round edges in your font will feel more friendly to the users. Cultural exposure, we should associate certain fonts with things that we've seen before. We should make it more familiar with the users, depending on what type of brand we're building. Readability type reduces cognitive. load and improves recall and comprehension. We should prioritize clear forms of body text and expressive faces for emotional emphasis. Then we should move to we move to these different types of fonts. We have two major types of fonts, which are serif and sans serif fonts. Serif fonts are the fonts that have small strokes at the end of them, at the end of the letters. They're often used as traditional, trustworthy, and authoritative branding. They are commonly used in newspaper, law firms, financial institutions, and the likes. Serif fonts implies tradition and readability. While sans serif font conveys modernity and clarity. So when we're creating our brand, we should make sure we're using serif fonts. Many luxurious brands use serif fonts because it communicates elegance and heritage. When a person sees the brand, they associate the brand with quality and trust. Then we move on to sans serif fonts. Those are fonts without serifs, without the little strokes underneath them. They look clean and they are used for decorative or the display branding. These fonts are very popular in digital spaces because they're easy to read on screens. Most tech companies use self-service fonts because they communicate simplicity, innovation, and accessibilities. They also make products feel user-friendly and modern. So when you're creating your branding, depending if you're trying to create a more modern brand, you should be able to know which type of sans serif font you're using for your brand. Then the way and contrast of your font. Stroke weight and clusters contrast. Adjust tones for the users. You should use light font weight for elegance, and then you should use heavy font weight for authority. You should also use your weight for hierarchy to reinforce emotional message. To pass your information in your branding effectively, you should know what type of font size and font weight you're using to create a good hierarchy for your fonts. I mean, for your brand identity. Curvature and mood. The curved letter forms evoked warmth and approachability. Angular shape signal position and energy. You should use curvature to align type with brand emotions and audience expectation, balancing personalities and readability. Typography plays a huge role in branding. So, the type of brand personality you want to show to your users is important. So, most of the time, if you want them to feel warmth and approachable, you should use a curved letter form, a curved typeface. It shows angular shapes, it shows precisions, and it gives energy back to the users. Then we should also move to fonts applications, practical applications of fonts. In our branding decisions, we should choose typefaces that reflect branding values, which is heritage, innovation, or friendliness. To combine a distinct display face with functional type fonts to ensure identity and legibility. UI and readability. Prioritize open counters, sufficient spacing, and clear X heights for on-screen clarity. Users responsive sizing and system-friendly fonts to optimize performance and accessibility. In UX design, font affects the readability and usability of our font. A good font type or a good typeface or typography makes content easier to understand and to interact with, while a poor font style will frustrate your users and reduce the engagement on your product, on your design. The advertising tone. You should select expressive display types to set mood, keep body font neutral for clarity. You should also balance creativity with legibility to maximize message retention and conversion. Font is in our everyday lifestyle. Font influences us in everything we do, and we don't even notice it. From the road signs on the road to our products packaging and to the shapes of even our own handwriting. So this correctly guides us without subconsciously. Brands use them when they're advertising, and we don't even know. And it keeps they make sure our bodies are non-reactive to it. So you should also have a little bit of creativity when you're creating your font. So when users sees your font, they can easily recognize it. Like for instance, MTN now, they have their own their own font of theirs. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if we see it subconsciously, we won't know, but would immediately think to, oh, this might be an FTN type of font. It's called MTN Bright Sans. You can check it up online. The implementation of guidelines. You have to be consistent in your font usage. Define a typography system, limited family, size, scale, and spacing rule. So whenever you're building your brand, you should have a limited amount of font or type spaces you use. You should have maybe one or two. You should limit the family. You shouldn't go crazy with it. You also have a scaling that you use for different elements. Maybe it's an header, it's a body text, or it's a title. You should have your scaling. You should have your scaling down. And this spacing rule, maybe you want to use 1.5 spaces between your lines or two spacing. You should also be consistent with it throughout. Document guidelines should ensure consistency applies across all channels and all teams. You also have your testing method. You should validate fonts through A/B testing with ability checks and user feedback. This is mostly boiled down to the UI UX part of it, the UX part of it. You should make sure you test your fonts with your users, whichever one of them they like best. Due to their feedback, you will know what to do. You should also measure comprehension, recall, and engagement to refine typography choices. Then your font should be accessible. You should and considerate. Your font should have a wide range of users that won't have problems. You won't have problem when they view it. Your font should be inclusive. Ensure your contrast minimum sizes and dyslexia friendly. Ensure there are contrast minimum sizes and dyslexia alternative for your users. Users with dyslexia or epilepsy, photoepilepsy, or any other type of disability should be able to click to your design and won't be affected by the font of your design. You provide systematically scalable types and semantic margins have been marked to support assistive technologies and inclusive designs. In conclusion, you should align typography with brand goals to shape perception and improve communication. Establish rules, test systematically, and prioritize accessibilities for consistent, effective results. The key takeaways here are that your font should communicate emotions, your typography should shape perceptions, different colors create different moods, and choose the right font to improve communication and design effectiveness. That, thank you. That's all I have for today's presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take any questions and hear your thoughts on fonts. Uh, Tibuna, I can see your hands up. Okay, you were clapping. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Amatayo, you raise hand.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, GBADEJOKO.
Good morning.
Nice presentation.